Thank you to the CSA for putting on this event. I really enjoy participating in it every year, so congrats on another successful event. And before I get started, I just wanted to draw attention to my land acknowledgements box, highlighted in yellow, and say a special thank you to the Gwich'in Renewable Resources Council and the community of Wrigley for their help in this project and for always being willing to lend us a paddle when we inevitably forget ours. So methane and carbon dioxide, are important greenhouse gases that act to warm the earth, and they're produced in the sediments of lakes. And emissions of these gases are expected to increase as the north warms. But as the north warms, this can also lead to permafrost thaw, so the thawing of perennially frozen ground. And permafrost thaw can allow water to move through the landscape at a greater connectivity and deliver nutrients and organic material to lakes. So when permafrost is there, the water has to move on top of it. But when it thaws, the water can move deeper within those channels, and that's where it picks up the nutrients and organic material. So higher nutrient delivery has the potential to increase the productivity of lakes. So there's small plants and algae that live in these lakes that will become more active. And increased productivity can lead to more methane production. Think of like a tree takes CO2 out of the atmosphere. These organisms can take CO2 out of the atmosphere and into the lake. So essentially, these lakes can be methane sources, carbon dioxide sources, or sinks. And so I wanted to know, what are the combined effects of climate warming and permafrost thaw on methane and carbon dioxide emissions from lakes? And to do that, I used a space for time approach across a climate gradient. So we have lakes that are in more northern permafrost regions, all the way down to southern permafrost-free regions. And you can think of these lakes in the south as kind of proxies as to potential change for the north. And I hypothesized that both carbon dioxide and methane emissions would increase as you move south because temperature would be the most important factor. And we did find that methane emissions increased as you move south. But we also found that carbon dioxide emissions actually decreased. So instead of being sources of CO2 to the atmosphere, they're actually taking CO2 out of the atmosphere and into the lake. And importantly, we found that the links between these trends were different for methane and carbon dioxide. So we found that methane was mainly controlled by those temperature changes, while carbon dioxide was more controlled by those changes in productivity. So to outline this, here's a conceptual diagram. The figure that you're looking at is an example of a northern lake. Here there's widespread permafrost and limited connectivity. The water is moving on top of the permafrost. This leads to lower productivity in the lakes and a CO2 source to the atmosphere. At the same time, there's colder waters, so those microbes that are producing methane are not as active, therefore there's lower emissions. But as you move south into these permafrost-free regions, there's higher connectivity. The water can move deeper within that ground, leading to higher productivity and nutrient delivery in these lakes, allowing those organisms to take CO2 out of the atmosphere. At the same time, there's warmer waters, so those microbes that are producing methane can be more active, leading to a greater net source of methane to the atmosphere. So the main takeaway is that in the future, as temperatures warm and permafrost thaws across this northern landscape, lakes have the potential to emit more methane, but also take more CO2 out of the atmosphere. However, the last disclaimer is that methane is a more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, so even small changes in methane emissions are likely to be more impactful. And then finally, I just want to end with saying that the largest sources of methane are still agricultural and fossil fuel use. And with that, I just want to say thank you, and maybe there's some time for some questions.